When it comes to professional wrestling, if you are talking about it, we are talking about it. Welcome to the WrestleChat Podcast with the Ant-Man.
Here we go. The weekend is here. That means we're back with iHeart's official weekly wrestling podcast, the WrestleChat Podcast. Welcome to episode number 32. Hey, I'm the Ant-Man, your host. Joining me, as he does each and every week, Michael Glavin. Good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you too. It's been a fun week. We've been able to exchange some pretty comical texts that surround wrestling, so I'm excited to dive in and talk about all the things that we now have lots of inside jokes about behind the scenes.
You know what I've contemplated is turning this podcast into just reading weekly texts from us, and we don't have to come up with any content. We've already done it. It's already in our text app, yep. And we just read those and see how much trouble we can get in.
Exactly.
I wonder if iHeart will let us do that. Let's kick this thing off with our question from last week. Speaking of texts, true or false? Tell us why Ric Flair will wrestle again in AEW. What do you guys think? CoralPunk52 said true, because he's never stuck to his word about being retired and just thinks of it as a payday. Plus, he says he wants to die in the ring, and AEW is the perfect place for him to die in the ring. Wow. Luke Leyland says he's 80. The best you can do is put him as a manager. So I'm guessing that his pick there is false. Michael, where do you stand? Ric Flair wrestling again, this time in an AEW ring.
Man, here's the thing. I think he might do it. And I think part of the problem is Tony Khan is a fan at heart. And when you have Ric Flair on your payroll, even if it's some type of super quick squash match or just something crazy, if you're a super fan like he is, you're not going to miss the opportunity to have Ric Flair wrestle for your promotion. And so I unfortunately, it behooves me to say that, I think Ric's probably going to do something in the ring in AEW.
I remember talking to you about Ric Flair's last match, that pay-per-view, and you're like, yes, I'll see a highlight if something crazy happens. I'm not going to buy that. I don't want to see Ric Flair in a ring again. And I think our opinion has stayed the same. Don't really want to see Ric Flair in the ring again. Will it happen? Probably. We'll see in the coming weeks what happens with Ric Flair in AEW. We're going to throw up a new question for you guys to give your 2 cents on coming up here a little bit later on. So be sure you're following us at WrestleChat Podcast on Instagram. A couple of things went down last Saturday in the middle of the day here in America. Prime time in Saudi Arabia. Crown Jewel was back. And I saw a report that WWE makes $80 million on these shows, on each one of these shows, equivalent to about 3 WrestleManias in one shot. So no wonder they pull out all of the stops. I mean, I'll be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see this thing getting bigger and bigger. I'm not sure if you watched any of it that you noticed that looked like a smaller arena, too. It didn't look like a stadium that they first started off in. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with this show as it progresses, because we know it's not going backwards. It's only going further, and they're going to be doing more and more of these. One of the big takeaways was Logan Paul is now your United States champion. Michael, we've talked about it here many, many times right here on this show. Definitely believe that this is good for WWE business. I honestly could, though, do without photos of Logan in the shower with only the U.S. title covering him. But, he's getting eyeballs and on that title. No surprise here, Michael.
As I speak for every single person on the roster, when they saw that picture hit Twix, they went, "Dear God, please let them have sent him home with a replica."
I no longer want to fight for the title. I don't want the title.
It's no longer in my sights. But what's happening already is exactly what I would hope, in that he is carrying that thing everywhere. He's putting that fun little heel rub on it with just being, the kind of stuck up, personality that he is, carrying the title around.
It's kind of Shawn Michaels-ish.
It is.
With the world title. Yeah.
It is. And man, I love what he's doing right now. He looks stellar with the title. It's a great looking title to begin with, and man, 2 thumbs up from me. It's really good stuff.
Be careful, Logan. You got rid of Riddle for not wearing any clothes in the ring. You need to make sure you keep those drawers on, all right?
That's right.
Another big takeaway was John Cena putting guys over. Huge win for Solo Sikoa. And kind of looking like a see you when we see you for John Cena. Did this last run of Cena solidify him as the GOAT in your eyes, Michael?
You know, they've been tossing around the GOAT, and that's a tough thing for me. Is he in contention for GOAT? Of course he is. I mean, he's one of the most decorated champions and superstars of all time. But boy, when you start talking about GOATs, you're just in a realm with some people that, you know, how do you stack up against somebody simply like The Undertaker, you know, who had a 30-year career.
Yeah.
Granted, not as many championships, but sizable influence and much more memorable matches and history-making type things. But to your original question, you know, I think this was a great run for him. I think the people loved it. Do I think we checked the boxes of retirement? No. Super happy to see, you know, Solo go over. I think that's a great thing for John to do, but I think John needs to go out with that match, you know, and while Solo's great, Solo is not that match. And so I think somebody needs to put him down, you know, good old HBK Ric Flair style. I'm sorry, I love you. And do it that way. But overall, fantastic run. I don't think it's the last time we're going to see him. I think he'll squeeze some time in the next year or two to come back and do something to really put a bow on it.
WrestleMania 40. It's a GOAT toss for the title of the GOAT. Maybe we'll see that match. I don't know. A little hint to the end of the show question here. We're going to circle back on John Cena here a little bit later on. First, I want to circle up with you, Ryan, John, and Jay on the Manchild Chronicles podcast. A brand new episode dropped yesterday, Michael.
Yeah. Really chill episode this week. Kind of a fun little game that we're trying for the first time. We called it... boy, what did we call it? I'm trying to remember. Like Manchild by the numbers or something like that. And it was kind of a trivia game centered around numbers, and we would pick some questions like, hey, this was not one of the questions, but just to give you some context, like how many windows are there in New York City? And, you know, the fun banter and discussion that comes along with it. So Manchild by the numbers, you can't ever, you know, write off that there won't be any dark humor or inappropriate jokes, or just laugh till you pass out type moments. So if you haven't watched the Manchild Chronicles before, come check us out. We would love to have you.
If you're watching this show right now on YouTube, you can scroll down to other channels that we love and click on the Manchild Chronicles podcast right there and watch it. If you're listening, you can click on this show's description and listen wherever you love to listen. Sometimes it feels like there's like a gallery of folks that sit around and scour the internet to see what kind of clues they can find to support their belief that CM Punk is on his way back to WWE. This week, it was a page update on WWE.com. Match highlights and several other things were updated there on the website. Is this a case of building a case around your beliefs? Or do you, Michael, actually believe that people are following clues to a truth?
Here's the thing. CM Punk is probably one of the most highly watched personalities in, I don't want to say properties, but let's say intellectual property in all of the wrestling business. And all I can say is there have been no page updates since he left WWE a long time ago. And so
that's very true.
Up to this point, I think it's been people building a case. This is quite the interesting circumstance. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put myself in the position of a back-end developer at WWE. I'm sitting at my desk. It's a midday on Wednesday. I'm trying to get through my week. I'm bored. I've done my work. I'm really just kind of screwing around, whatever. I see the Superstars page, and I go, you know what? If I just clicked on that profile right now, in the midst of all this news that's going on, that will show that it's updated. That is something that I would do. And because I know that I would do that, I'm wondering if someone else has done that as well. You know, not everything on the back end of computer systems can be tracked. Most of it can, some of it can't. A page being refreshed, can you really track it? But all we know is that the CM Punk profile page on WWE.com has been updated. And that could be a clue, or it could be nothing, just like everything else from the last 6 months.
Man, isn't that true? This is a clue you got to be looking for. Who stumbles across it and goes, "Hey, did you see this? Yesterday they updated the page and it was CM Punk's page." I don't know. Maybe there are people who have nothing else to do but sit around and look for CM Punk news, like these tiny morsels of information, and watch it turn into something now that I say that. So we'll see. Hey, as TV rights deals continue to wait in limbo for some shows, there are others that are locking down very, very lucrative deals, like WWE's NXT, moving to the CW in October of 2024. And you might be saying, hey, wait, isn't NWA going to the CW? Short answer is possibly. But that deal could be in limbo now. Let's start with NXT first. A note from Fightful Red. This was a product that they were not receiving rights fees for just 5 years ago, and have increased revenue by millions for something that they were already producing. That is the ideal definition of return on investment. However, I have a sense that this might be a bigger deal for the CW to have NXT on their channel, bringing a whole new batch of CW viewers like me and you to their channel. I don't know if you watch CW on a regular basis. I do not. What is this to you? Is this a big deal for CW acquiring the rights of NXT coming in 2024?
I think it's really interesting. CW and its former names prior to that, they've always had this very eclectic kind of batch of television. They always had a lot of feel-good dramas. The last time that I was consistently watching CW properties was in the offshoot DC world, with shows like Arrow and The Flash and different things like that when they were crafting the Arrowverse. Other than that, I can't say that the flavors of the other things they have to offer has kind of been my cup of tea. But this is interesting because we had talked about the news of NWA. We talked about a less than tasty segment that they did that has put them in a little bit of hot water. It's interesting because it kind of makes you wonder if really both of these things were in play at the same time. I'm sure NWA would be just ecstatic to be on the same channel that NXT's on. I can't imagine that NXT and the powers that be are all too keen about sharing market share, with another company, however small it may be. And so it does beg the question in the midst of this, drama of the Colombian White on the NWA pay-per-view. It kind of makes you wonder if NXT slid into that slot, and that's where the rumors are coming from that the NWA could possibly be online only now. But
it was a spot in their pay-per-view last weekend depicting stars, partaking in the enjoyment of what we like to call booger sugar. That the deal may indeed be in jeopardy. They're talking about it could be going to digital only, and I mean that's a major hit to what was some exciting news for NWA just a couple of weeks ago, Michael. That's big.
It's crazy, but either way, NXT coming to the CW, I think is going to be a great another mainstream avenue for people to consume that content. And with all the rumors we've heard over the last couple of years of Nick Khan, the CEO or board member, whatever his title is, of WWE, wanting to make NXT a legitimate third brand, this is a great way to do that and a fresh start for them. And to your point, they're going to be doing this producing anyway. This is where they grow their stars, where they grow their production crews. What better way than to get a fat check for something you're already going to do anyway?
Huge, especially as a which now they are a new company, TKO. So it's going to be exciting to see. That's not until, this time next year, close to the end of 2024. I hope you guys had a chance to check out our Vault video last week, Ric Flair and Kerry Von Erich, where Kerry dropped the NWA World's title back to Ric in Japan. That was just 18 days after Kerry won it at Texas Stadium. Michael, what do you have for our Vault this week?
I'm taking us back to a match that is really nostalgic for me. Now, remember, I'm a little bit younger in my wrestling. My heyday was the late 90s, early 2000s, all the way up through the 2010s was my coming-of-age wrestling time. And I remember, for those of us that remember LimeWire, I remember downloading on LimeWire, which is going to be our Vault match for this week, Shawn Michaels and Triple H in the unsanctioned match at SummerSlam 2002. And while I want to highlight this match for just the masterpiece that it is, there's several elements around this that I wanted to share that make up a really interesting time in wrestling history. So around this same time, the World Heavyweight Championship is introduced by Eric Bischoff to the WWE. Obviously, the classic big gold title that we had last seen in WCW. Triple H was awarded that title, didn't even have to fight for it. Bischoff just took it out of the bag and handed it to him. Along this same time, Shawn Michaels shocks the world, shows up in the NWO, and surprises us back after a time of injury and drug abuse and different things like that. He had a role on TV here and there, but had never really done a lot. So Triple H and Shawn Michaels had been teasing the potential of a D-Generation X reunion. That night finally comes, and to the shock and absolute bewilderment of the world, Triple H delivers a pedigree to Shawn Michaels in the middle of all of this, which kicks off just a nuclear bomb of a feud between two high-caliber guys. So what happens in this match is it's set up beautifully that Hunter had been attacking Shawn Michaels and that Shawn was weak and he couldn't hang anymore, and Triple H was only using Shawn to get to the top, but then he accused Shawn of using Triple H to stay at the top because he just didn't have it anymore. And so it culminated at SummerSlam 2002 in this match that WWE claimed they would not put their stamp of approval on. This was Shawn Michaels' first match back from his very serious back injury that he sustained, I believe, in a casket match years earlier. So there's all the trepidation that comes with getting back in the ring for the first time in years. You have his real-life best friend who has to carry him through this without being injured. They put on an absolute classic match that, in my opinion, rivals matches that either one of them did with The Undertaker. It's a lesser-known match, but same quality as those ones that we often refer to. But what I want to point out to everybody, I want to encourage you guys to watch this match because this is the match from the Vault this week. But what I want to point you to is how this affected the title scene going forward, because shortly after this, Triple H would reign as the World Heavyweight Champion, and the feud between Shawn Michaels and Triple H would go through several high-profile matches through the course of the early stages of the World Heavyweight Championship. Shortly after SummerSlam 2002, we have the very first inaugural Elimination Chamber match, which was a absolutely brutal affair between a lot of what we would call Hall of Fame guys nowadays. Shawn Michaels came out on top in that match, and then that match circled around to a 3 stages of hell match with Triple H at Armageddon. And when you look at the entire arc of this, coming to a close at, I believe, Vengeance 2002 or 2003, I can't remember, but bringing to a close at that was this tightly compacted, beautiful feud between two guys who can just go. And the fact that it centers around the introduction of the World Heavyweight Championship, not to mention these just massive matches with such brutality and just awe around them. It's a really special time for me in wrestling history, and I would love for us all to revisit that place and time together. Check it out, Shawn Michaels versus Triple H, SummerSlam 2002. You can check it out on Peacock. Just go to their in-ring stuff in the WWE section. Find SummerSlam 2002.
That's way better than downloading it on LimeWire.
Way better.
End up with any viruses.
Way better.
Yeah, way better. We've got the link for you, or at least the what it is, what he just said. Triple H versus Shawn Michaels, SummerSlam 2002. Check that out. We just have the heading said Vault, and it'll remind you which match it is. So go there, and you can check it out. In a press release from TKO on Thursday, they announced that Vince McMahon is selling 8.4 million shares of his TKO stock. Significant by any accountant's numbers. However, it's only 1/3 of what he actually owns. Now, selling 1/3 is pretty big deal. Is this a cash out, or does Vince just have his eye on some fancy new yacht, Michael?
I don't know. I think it could be either. I mean, the reality is the guy's like 80 or 80-something years old.
Yeah.
His position in the company right now is not up to him. And so owning it at this point is really neither here nor there. Vince, you go buy that yacht, buddy. You go do it. You deserve it. You deserve it.
The timing is interesting too, though. It's a little close to Christmas, so I hope that Stephanie and Triple H and the Shane. I hope they don't get their hopes up that Daddy's throwing some green in the stocking. I doubt that happens. If you want to own some of TKO, we know a guy selling. Hey, before we leave this week, I told you we're going to circle back on John Cena, and it's clear that John is indeed winding things down. But would you like to see John win the world title for the 17th time and break Ric Flair's record? Yes or no? And why? That's the post on our Instagram right now, and our question of the week. Chime in over at WrestleChat Podcast on Instagram and let us know. Think about that one, Michael, and we'll talk about it next week here on the show. Listen, it's been fun catching up with you and talking wrestling again this week, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Always have a good time. As always, thanks for having me.
And make sure you check out our Michael's Vault video this week, Triple H and Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 2002. That's going to do it for another episode of the WrestleChat Podcast. For Michael Glavin, I'm the Ant-Man, and we'll see you next week right here on the WrestleChat Podcast.